to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program MAGA Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, there's no shortage of news stories, folks, right now in the world. There's still unrest in Kazakhstan, even though it seems to have cooled off a little bit. Oh, look at that. Johnny Million's joining us right now. It's amazing. It might actually work. This is so exciting. Could it possibly be that Johnny Million is in with us and everything? And there he is. Whoops, I had him there for a second. Look at that. Hey. I can't hear you yet, but there you are. Now I can hear you. Okay. Oh, it sounds...
Hello.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's terrible.
Oh, wait. I changed the microphone. Hold on.
That happens sometimes.
I was trying anything.
I understand. Well, now I just have to get your audio going to Chicago, and we're 100% good. So give me a second to finagle that situation, and then off we go. I was saying, Johnny Million, just as you were joining us, that right now there honestly is no shortage of crazy storylines in the news. There's no shortage of things that are happening, legit news, geopolitical shifts in the entire world. I mean, Ukraine and Russia being, the most obvious ones, but, countries like Turkey and Syria fighting over refugees that have been coming in from Iraq and this giant push to reintroduce them to Iraq, which is there's getting a lot of pushback from that country and yada yada. I mean, like stuff that could, on a normal scale, geopolitically tip the scales of life, that could eat up the news cycle for months.
Yeah,
and
M&Ms.
on so many levels. And I think Chicago can now hear you, and I can't. That might be the case. So this is super fun. Say something, Johnny Million, so I know you're there. Check. That's right. Okay, so I'll
we can
fix that.
barely hear Johnny.
Oh, he's very quiet? Okay, well, we'll fix that over a little bit. Yeah, it's going to take a moment. It's understandable. So, Johnny, turn your volume up if you feel like it on your end. It might help us a little bit because your audio went away when you fixed that. So, there's plenty of news out there is what I'm saying. And when there's that much news going on, the supply chain issues, inflation, worldwide problem, still leveraging out on COVID and what will be the natural response for not only our society and country, but the rest of the world and our interaction with them. There's plenty to go on. If you wanted to just coast as a news provider, you're good for a while. And yet, if there's any indication that you got nowhere to go, you got nothing to do, that's any better than, I think you could seek nothing better than Tucker Carlson and what he thinks passes for news on his site. Hold on, check this out.
Can you hear me any better?
Change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, we've achieved equity. They've won.
I'm deeply, deeply disturbed by the idea that apparently Tucker Carlson wants to sex up an M&M. That not so much that it was that he does want to do that he ever did is probably the most curious aspect of this whole thing. What in the world is that man talking about?
It.
Well, how else is Tucker Carlson going to get laid?
Is that what it is? Does he, by the way, is he having an issue with sort of the trans aspect of what if he fell in love with a peanut M&M and then later found out it was a peanut M&M and now he's got to deal with his own internalized homophobia and whatever. Like, it's the level of goofy waste of time that story is, beyond the fact that, we know that giant corporations, especially ones as big as the M&M, Mars Corporation, just like Target or any of these other groups, when they finally come around on a social issue that is making the rounds across the world, I am not insisting that they are totally disingenuous, that there aren't people that work there that aren't genuine in their beliefs, genuine in their desire to kind of open up inclusion to things. But when Target puts on, plus size mannequins, they didn't do it before 60% of Americans have a weight issue. They did it after. They did it when it financially was no longer viable to not to. So this idea that somehow it's part of a corporate top-down attempt to restructure society has always been an absurdity. That society itself is being sold to, and they're going to do marketing tests and focus groups and all that kind of stuff, and find like, how do we best sell to the audience that we're selling to. And as we approach certain holidays, what they've also learned on a marketing level, be it Black History Month or Pride Month or any of these things, people have become wise over time to the idea that you just decided to do it this month, that it undermines it. If they wait till June to push this out, then everybody will go, this is crass marketing and you're taking advantage of people and you're just you don't really care. So they've all done the math on this. They've all done the focus groups. They've all done the pushback. And what they've discovered is that you must do this 4 or 5 months ahead of time. You have to add this aspect. And let me see if I'm getting the audio that I need off of Johnny Million from here.
Hey, 1 2 1 2.
I see. That's why it is. That in this I would add this up right next to the like the Target mannequins and that kind of stuff. That the company did the work, looked into it, looked at their audience, did focus grouping and sales stuff on everybody, and went, okay, this will increase sales with this particular group this much, but if we do it on Pride Month or any of these other months, it'll be seen as crass commercialism. So we'll do it a little bit early. We'll do it before Valentine's Day. Then it'll be even nicer. Then because it's not like we're trying to sell a lot of chocolate in about 3 weeks based on relationships. And again, one of the most fascinating parts of this is that Tucker Carlson is fundamentally incapable of sort of understanding just corporations responding to positive marketing, responding to the wants and needs of their customer base in a really like easy to spot, simple way. And on the other hand, he may not be incapable of seeing it, but his idea of an opportunistic story to take advantage of is fascinating to me. And he is, he's, to use a Steve Bannonism, he's the tip of the spear of the current right-wing talkosphere. As goes Tucker, so goes the Ben Shapiro's and the Don Jr. Rumble videos. Everything, it's trickle down jerkonomics, and it starts with Tucker these days, which is angering Hannity, but also allowing him to dodge some of the dumber bullets that are happening. And he's got enough problems. That's the other thing. So there again, maybe I just stumbled on it accidentally. Maybe these are the kind of news stories you see on Fox News, talking about how no one wants to sleep with an M&M anymore. When did they start? Good Lord. But
he seems so disappointed.
Very disappointed. He seems angry, and that's sort of the funny part of it, is that it seems like a legit emotional upset for him.
Yeah, he's like,
and
look,
yet,
I just came around to getting off on M&Ms.
Yeah,
and now you do this.
Right. This is you're starting to yuck my yum just when I figured out what my kink is. It's so weird. But here's the thing, and this when we come back, maybe we'll maybe we've accidentally stumbled on something in this conversation, in that this is the kind of story you see on Fox News when every other network is running stories about how Sean Hannity's text messages are all over the January 6th lead up and post, and Sean Hannity was very aware in these text messages that what happened on the 6th was not only awful, clearly Trump supporters, it was part of a coordinated attack, and that Trump had his hands all over it.
Yeah.
And needed to distance himself. He was doing the real media manipulation, like when he had Don Jr. on. But we'll talk about it when we come back. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Like and subscribe at infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/Hal Sparks, where if you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime to subscribe to the show. And it really helps us out. Patreon.com. Yep, patreon.com/Hal Sparks. Look, I did all the business. Now let's do some other business and we'll be back.
Attention, attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
This is, whenever we talk about, the January 6th stuff, and we having just passed the 1-year anniversary, and the January 6th committee is really gaining steam. They subpoenaed Giuliani last week, and we found out over this last week that Giuliani, every time we think he's had the worst week he's ever had, amazingly, the follow-up week is even worse. And on top of this,
pretty much the worst things that Trump ever tried were
yeah.
like things that Giuliani blew by him. He's like, hey, what if you do this? And Trump's like,
yeah, just toss off stupid ideas from Giuliani were actionable intelligence. Meanwhile, he doesn't trust our own intelligence community about Russia. But Giuliani's going, why don't we just tell him this? Why don't we just tell him we just won? Just say we won. Just say it. Just say we won. Right.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah. Meanwhile, other cooler heads were trying to prevail. And the House Select Committee sent a letter to Ivanka Trump this week, and basically said, "Look, you need to come in and sit down with us, and here's why: because we have your messages talking to this person, we have testimony from this person that you came in and you were there when this conversation took place." They admit to it. Another person says you went into the room, you were there, so you need to testify about what happened. There's no father-daughter privilege in this situation. You don't technically work in the White House. You were just like it was like well, yeah, of course she's part of the Kardashian media empire. She's at the House. Like that was the level of sort of official duties that they would put in these. Is this kind of like, she's one of my rando advisors because she's my daughter, and therefore, thank you, Benny Loco. So
it's fun hearing all the sound effects come through. Just the speaker.
Now you know what it's like, and like in my head most of the time we're doing the show. Yeah. So, she got this letter, and in it, let's see, they basically mentioned, hey, Sean Hannity was texting your dad and was talking to Kayleigh McEnany and giving her a way to give Trump a soft landing from the hole he dug for himself. And along with this other stuff comes this story that there was not only did he have this whole stupid plan to get the fake electors, which everybody, for all these folks, are going to jail for. Like they're either going to get probation or sentencing or a fine or some, because I mean it's they violated state and federal law.
What did they talk to recently that was like was it Nevada?
Boris Epstein. What do you mean? Which one? Yeah.
There was a governor that they talked to about this. Maybe it was the governor of Arizona,
yes.
where they asked him about like, oh, so what do you think about all this? And he said, it sounds like somebody's trying to undermine democracy and we need to prosecute that.
Yes, right. Yes, that was, I think, one of the AGs there. And any
they
sensible...
didn't get like the softball answer they were hoping for. Like, there's no way they were really trying to do that. It's like, no, it sounds like real
Thank
mess.
you, Claudia. Yeah, and pretty direct about it, even though they were Republicans. A lot of Republicans are looking at this as a way to finally purge themselves of the Giuliani-Trump mindset that's been dogging.
Sense.
Yeah, because if they don't, they're in deep trouble come 2022's midterm election. Because I don't care what anybody says, don't believe the hype. They have a real election problem. They have a demographic problem in all these states. The gerrymandering they attempted did not land, or was thrown out entirely, or ended up being a wash. Or Democrats might even ultimately gain seats. They have watered down some very strong red districts into purplish districts in a way that they never have before, which means in an area they were 60-40, they suddenly brought in another 20% of voters from a strongly Democratic area, trying to break that one thing up, trying to get rid of basically one of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. What they did was they spread those voters out over 3 different congressional districts, making those 3 congressional districts more likely to go blue this time. And obviously they won't go like AOC blue, but they are going to go further than, say, Manchin blue. And that's a real fear, right?
Yeah.
That's a real fear for this. So Hannity was texting Kayleigh McEnany. He says, no more stolen election talk. Yes, impeachment, 25th Amendment are real, and many people will quit. Whoa. So
That's
he's
huge.
saying...
And McEnany was the press secretary at the time?
Yes, the press secretary. Though I will never lie to you. Which, by the way, there's such a thing as lies of omission. And I don't ever remember her bringing this up when she talked about Sean Hannity and Trump's relationship with Sean Hannity after this occurrence. Do you? No. 3rd and through 5th parts of Hannity's plan were not included in the letter to Ivanka. She says, love that, thank you. That is the playbook. I will help reinforce. And Hannity goes, key now, no more crazy people. And she said, yes, 100%.
What do they think they're fostering?
Right. Well, what she means is, and what he was talking about was Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, all the people that Fox News had already rejected because they were getting them in hot water with the Dominion lawsuit, which they are back in because they can't keep a leash on Bartiromo as far as this stuff goes. And so they got themselves out. They kept the agreement, and then she went and kind of screwed the pooch in that regard. So previously, he was not just talking to Kayleigh McEnany. He was also talking to Mark Meadows during this. And Meadows is one of those people where I am so grateful, like Giuliani, like Lynn Wood, like Sidney Powell, that he was a part of this. I think we as a country should thank our lucky stars. If you feel like taking a knee and looking up and post the goal in any kind, whatever your favorite sports event is, where you double tap the 2 and look at the sky. That this is the time to do it. When you score a touchdown or you hit a home run, because Meadows is a dum-dum. Meadows is not a smart person. And thank God that Trump was as dumb as he was when all this was going on and surrounded by as many stupid people. Oh, Johnny.
I love you, Hal.
Aw, you silly. That's hilarious.
It is quite literally the least I could do.
That's not. No, it isn't. Actually, I've seen the least you can do, and it's.
You've seen that full of a schnoz.
That's right.
I'm really sorry about that.
So, there's Hannity had been trying to corral and when your brain trust, when the sensible thought in the room is Sean Hannity, whose job it is currently to refer to Joe Biden as President Sippy Cup and do a sort of a triage of the Trump presidency by insinuating constantly that Biden has dementia, while obviously granting Trump interviews, and we'll play a little bit of that when we come back from this break, where Trump clearly has a massive senior moment when he, when Sean Hannity refers to, a metaphorical wall, and some people saw this on, that was posted on Twitter, and Trump goes into his auto spiel about his
Here's the word
wall.
wall. Yeah.
Because there is no other there. There's no situation where Trump's brain is better than it was in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And Sean Hannity, if he has enough brains, and it doesn't take much, but if he has enough brains to know that you don't want Sidney Powell anywhere near the White House on January 8th, after all this stuff, or Lynn Wood for that matter, who's calling for the execution of the vice president after a big group of maggots was storming the Capitol, clamoring for that very thing.
That's what happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in the White House, in the United States of America, and it wasn't Nixon talking to a painting and weirdly hearing voices back. This is people that Trump surrounded himself with, from Mike Lindell.
Does anybody else picture Willem Dafoe in the original Spider-Man when you think about Nixon doing those recordings? Remember, Willem Dafoe, talking in the mirror, having arguments with himself?
Norman's weak. He'll never take over. Right, yes. Yeah. When he's turning the Green Goblin talking to him. Yeah. Clearly. But every no matter which painting he talks to, from Roosevelt to Lincoln, they all talk like this. Like Abraham Lincoln, where'd my mustache go? So we'll be back right after this. So when Sean Hannity is your brain trust, and he's caught in this web, what do your friends and buddies on Fox News have to do? What can they do except run stories about how they no longer want to sleep with M&Ms? What else you got?
Did you see the shoes?
We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. This is the Hal Sparks Show. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So Trump goes on Hannity, and we know that he's like a drop the needle interview. Trump at this point cannot automatically go through sort of muscle memory phrasing and these kind of weird diatribes about the same things, like a stack of things he remembers from over the last few years, things that he said, whatever sentences he said the most, his brain just kind of saws those together, and just hammer and nail. And you cannot get an original thought out of him. Now, in the old days, people thought Trump was doing that, like they think of a lot of politicians doing it, is that they can dovetail the conversation towards whatever they want. That's a classic way of handling the media, is that, I know you want to ask me a question that's going to get me in trouble. So what I do is I take that question and then I drive it around to, well, one of the successes that we had was and I go into my little pre-programmed chunk about where I want the news to go. And you keep trying to get me back there. Well, are you going to deny that those things, look, this isn't about denial. This is about wanting what's best for this country and blah, 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 blah. And then you go into the next diatribe, right? That's standard media savvy. It's not hard to figure out. Most people these days, with as much access to social media as we have, and how many, influencers are now like a gender at this point. They take up so much of the populace that at a certain point there's so many influencers they can't influence anything anymore. They're stepping on each other, right? So they all know that. They all know that. You ever watch anybody on like a YouTuber or somebody who's famous on Instagram step outside the lines with their followers and have to apologize their way back in?
Yeah, that's
It's
weird.
oh yeah, and
Prisoners.
yeah, and the sort of weird abject cruelty of their own fans who they had cultivated for years, and they're like, this is the thing that built me a house and kept me safe, was this group of people that I've shoved into this thing, and they watch everything I do. Didn't realize that those people were putting a barrier around you the same time you were putting a barrier around them. And then they find out the hard way. And then they have to go through what I'm talking about, which is this kind of like way of dealing with the issue the way you want to deal with that issue, right? So you go through all this. There's a version of that that's legit and logical and makes sense. And then there's, oh, you don't understand what the heck I'm talking about. You're so locked into what you want to talk about, you're not even waiting till the question's finished to start talking. That you're just like, I might as well be someone you're trying to pick up in a bar by hearing yourself think, talk out, right? So here we go. This is
Cash Patel, I've asked you this question before, and that is, did you authorize, as required by law, the calling up of up to 20,000 National Guard troops?
Whoops, hold on one second. I'm going to make that a little louder because it seems a little quiet.
I can hear it so well.
Okay, great.
Patel, I've asked you this question before, and that is, did you authorize, as required by law, the calling up of up to 20,000 National Guard troops on January the 4th, and maybe even other occasions, in the lead up to what everybody knew would be a big rally? And every big rally, I guess you always have bad actors, but on the heels of the rioting, 574 riots in the summer of 2020 that killed dozens, injured thousands of cops, and caused billions in property damage. Did you authorize calling up the Guard? And then it became, the chain of command went to Nancy Pelosi and to the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser. Did you, as required by law, authorize that?
100%, and attested to by many people, and they turned it down. Nancy Pelosi turned it down. I guess they both did, but Nancy Pelosi turned it down, and she's in charge of the Capitol. So they run the Capitol, the security of the Capitol.
Listen to this part.
If you had 10,000 or 20,000, but if you had 10,000, if you had 5,000 soldiers wrapped around the Capitol, you would have had no January 6th as we know it. There would have been no problem whatsoever. But they turned it down, which tells you everything. It was 3 days before. I think they have it down very accurately.
By the way, if you'll notice, that has become the defense currently, where Trump himself,
It's really backwards.
Yeah. He also said this during the
I've been around you long enough to know that's not a problem for you at all.
Well, I went and took a test, and as Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's great guy, now he's a congressman, and they love him in Texas, but he said he aced it, and I don't think he ever saw anyone ace it. And I immediately said, because they started passing the false narrative.
So about his dementia test, that's in the same interview where he goes off on the wall, and there's three things about this interview that I thought were very telling. The wall comment, ends up being, just kind of a, either him not caring what Sean's saying, or someone's talking to him and he just hears the word wall because he's on the phone. He can't Zoom the call in. I don't know what that's about. I mean, he likes to call in basically because he's just laying in bed covered in Cheetos or something. So he likes to do what he did with Morning Joe. And by the way, Joe, Mika, you're partly responsible for this nonsense because you let him silk pajama interview for years, acting like anything he had to say was actually worthwhile because it made news and you guys hung out with him. And the same thing with like Hannity and all these other folks. Like, at what point are you just gonna, when else do you see someone on the phone other than an emergency? The only time you ever hear someone calling in, not Zooming in, they talk to somebody, physically, they show them they're on camera, is in an emergency. There's been a shooting, a hurricane, Some major thing happened. People have been up all night, and a bill was passed, and it affects a certain state. So way out in that state, they call somebody on the phone like, "This just passed. What's your thoughts?" Immediately. They don't have time to set up a camera, get to a studio. There's nobody there to do it. That kind of stuff. And yet Trump does this all the time. And it's almost required that Bartiromo and that Sean Hannity take the call and let him blather to his heart's content, and with no pushback of like, no, we should have you on camera for this if you're going to actually speak to the country. It's not like he hasn't set up his office at Mar-a-Lago to look like a little Oval Office, which is hilarious. Meanwhile, accusing the Biden administration of, in their display studio East Room kind of building that they built, that has been in use for years, by the way, of making a fake Oval Office, that nonsense, which is really just where they can have these kind of on-camera meetings and not be inside the buildings because they're using all new technology. So they built this like every other country does. So when Putin does it, it's a sign of strength. When he sets up a special room for broadcasting from, that's a sign of strength. When Biden does it, it's because he's not really president and Trump really runs things. Right. So the letter from the January 6th committee to Ivanka Trump has a couple of, some major, gotchas in it as far as she's concerned. Like this is why we need to talk to you. I think this is page 2. On January 6th, as January 6th approached, President Trump attempted on multiple occasions to persuade Vice President Pence to participate in his plan. One of the president's discussions with the vice president occurred by phone on the morning of January 6th. You were present in the Oval Office and observed at least one side of that telephone conversation. General Keith Kellogg was also present in the Oval Office during that call and has testified about that discussion as follows. Question: It's been reported that President said to the Vice President, "You don't have the courage to make a hard decision." Maybe not those exact words, but something like that. Do you remember like that? He said words, and I don't remember exactly either, but something like that, yeah. Being like, you're not tough enough to make the call. Another report of the phone call said that Trump said, "Mike, it's not right. You can do this. I'm counting on you to do it. If you don't do it, I picked the wrong man 4 years ago. You're going to wimp out." Do you remember anything like this? Words like that, yes. I can't exactly. I can't. It's tough, yeah. General Kellogg also testified regarding the remarks. At the close of the call, Ivanka Trump turned to me and said, "Mike Pence is a good man." And I said, "Yes, he is." So Ivanka, obviously, I don't think there's any news in Trump haranguing Mike Pence on the phone, basically going, "You're a wuss, Mike. If you don't give me this, you're a wuss. You're not my friend anymore." Like he literally once said, "I don't want to. If you don't do this, I don't want to be your friend anymore." He literally said this. Like you're seeing a grown man devolve into like middle school mentality. Yep. But the most telling aspect of it, and I think what the January 6th committee would want from her as far as testimony, is the confirmation of that final little piece, which is where she, apropos of just hearing the call, sides with Mike Pence against her own father in that moment and says Mike Pence is a good man. And Kellogg says, "Yes, he is." And like I have, there's no love lost between me and someone like Mike Pence. I don't think anybody on the Democratic side of the aisle would ever care to have him in charge of the levers of power ever again.
Oh, governmentally, he's a menace.
It's terrible. But in that moment, that dude was in a tortured situation with a very vindictive boss who he had done nothing but fillet for, oh my God, for like every time he, like, it was a meme. It was a gag that over his shoulder, this fawning look on Mike Pence's face, like he was.
Remember the water bottle?
Oh, yeah.
Where they put it up and put it back down on the floor and drink at the same time, and Pence was like trying to mirror everything that Trump did.
Yeah, and it's, somewhere between like a forlorn lover and a proud papa. Had this weird kind of like soft, watery gaze at the dude, and just he could do no wrong. Like backed him on every stupid decision, even when it was an obvious contradiction, denying PPE to states. Pence went and undermined the president at that time and gave them the stuff. Like, he even got to the point where Trump recognized that was happening, was like, Mike's nice, he'll go talk to them and then give them the stuff, but I wouldn't do it. And the amount of contempt you have to have for your fellow Americans to be like that for as many years as you do, and then finally at this one moment to finally, I don't know, come to your senses. Maybe he was free for the first time. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, and maybe what was really happening is, dear God, can you imagine being this guy's vice president for 4 more years, especially if he feels unleashed to do whatever illegal crap he wants because he has seized the presidency of the United States. That maybe, in line with everything else about Mike Pence, that these weren't like this wasn't a moment of clarity. I think that's worth considering as well. That it wasn't a moment of America truly first in this situation. It was Mike Pence waking up to the idea of, this has been hell. I have been an underling to this idiot, to this lunatic. And this is my only way out is a torturous and dangerous endeavor where his own supporters might ultimately kill me. But given the choice, I know there's been some story about like Mike Pence saved America, but in reality, what I see is a man saving himself from another 4 years of having to be in the same building with Donald Trump.
And he had a couple opportunities before that day to step in and quote unquote save America.
Right, never did. Never did. Only after
the chance of him being hung in a public gallows did he decide to make the right decision.
Right. Yeah, and maybe even realized it was the right decision. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. This is a Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Patreon.com/Hal Sparks. Think about becoming a supporter. And then, of course, Twitch.tv/Hal Sparks if the youngin' in your house likes to watch news-related content. That's where you'll find them looking. We'll be back.
Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
One of the moments where news people, I think it's about sort of the integrity of the message. And even and there's probably a version of that integrity where you got a little wiggle room, because I don't think anybody on the right is surprised that Trump and Hannity are friends or that they would golf or any of that stuff. Now, if there was ever a picture of Biden and Rachel Maddow fishing together or something, like the right wing would just call it fascism and Marxism and communism, and this is just like Stalin, and they're controlling the media.
And honestly, they would probably really enjoy each other's company.
Oh, no question.
Biden's a load of fun to fish with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They'd probably go.
Uncle Joe would have while you're dropping lines and like.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was out here fishing with, I don't know. Insert ancient celebrity.
Right, exactly. Cary Grant, when Clyburn first entered the thing.
Grant.
Yeah, right. When he was getting up there in a couple of years, but he could tell a story, let me tell you. Bloop. Oh, look. Oh, no, that's nothing. Anyways, so somehow it just in the right wing, side of the media world, it's like understood. And maybe that's the concept, is that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. So, of course, the good guys have to stick together against the bad guys. And therefore, of course, Trump and Hannity are buddies. Which, by the way, I don't believe for a second they are. I think, obviously, Sean Hannity had a relationship with Michael Cohen. He was, client number 3. God knows if, considering what Michael Cohen did for Trump as client number 1, what did he have to do for Hannity? I mean, that he was a one-note instrument back then. And I don't know that he's ever come clean about that for any reason other than the fact that there might be some sort of scorched earth he has to face if he ever did that. Thank you, Georgina.
I think I might have just fixed my microphone. Do I sound better?
Yeah, it's clearer. It's nice. Hannity sent a message to Jim Jordan and to, I think, Mark Meadows at this point. This is the text itself. Guys, he apparently leads into, like, he's using the Don Jr. opener so he can get right to him. Guys, we have a clear path to land the plane in 9 days. He can't mention the election again, ever. I did not have a good call with him today. And worse, I'm not sure what is left to do or say, and I don't like knowing if it's truly understood. Ideas? So basically, this is Sean Hannity admitting that he's talking to a crazy person.
Yeah.
That Trump himself was losing it, was that he was all in on this Linwood, Sidney Powell conspiracy theory with Giuliani, whispering in his ear all these dumb ideas this entire time. But on top of that, Hannity is aware that he's slipping into this, that they have to fix this. What was the fix, by the way? Do you know what the fix was that they came up with? Mark Meadows and Hannity and these other folks and Kayleigh McEnany, they expelled Linwood, Sidney Powell, and Mike Pillow from Trump's sphere. And Giuliani.
Oh.
Giuliani kept coming back around because he kept getting invited to parties and Trump insisted. But they would run interference at these parties, apparently, to keep Giuliani away from him. Like, he's at the party, they'd say hi, but they wouldn't let him sit down together in a corner and start commiserating because Giuliani would start blathering the same crap. Right. And so that was the only thing keeping them separate in this situation. And, was that they materially ran these folks off. But Hannity in that text, and, is basically recognizing this Nixon yelling at paintings moment in Trump's head, which, with all the talk about how Trump needs to be put away and he needs to go to jail and what he did was illegal and all that, I agree with. I really do. There's no question. He was coordinating with the Willard in the war room. He believed that this was a good thing. He sat back and did nothing. So his just depraved indifference, anybody who died at the Capitol is his responsibility. In the same way that I will say unequivocally that the soldiers that died in our evacuation from Afghanistan because of the crush of people at the end was due to the fact that the Trump administration did set a date and did none of the work. As a matter of fact, they set us back 2 years by not processing special immigrant visas, making the extraction harder and tighter on a deadline than it needed to be. And had they done any of the early work and had they not intentionally hamstrung that entire process, those soldiers never would have be put in danger during that situation, and that's why they died. End of story. That's how it works. It was a suicide bomber. That's always a danger in that part of the world, but the way you mitigate that is by you do the homework beforehand. They did none of it, and they set this date that the Biden administration chased to make up for without leaving people in the country who might be slaughtered, who helped our soldiers. And we watched as soldiers and people who'd served in Afghanistan were concerned about specific individuals and the families of those specific individuals that helped us, that they were afraid were going to die. And we're having to coordinate ways to get them out because of this deadline. Well, those people were known for years. Some of those people had served with us for almost a decade. So why weren't they extracted from the country a year ago, the day the date was set? Why was there none of the work done? Why was none of the vetting and the transportation arranged for and all that kind of stuff during the entire last 2 years of the Trump administration? Because they never intended to do it. They were going to leave the Afghans. Stephen Miller didn't want any of them coming here. And neither did Trump. Leave them. It's their fault. It's their problem. It's not ours anymore. They're not Americans. They're Afghans. Forget them. And because of that attitude, there was a jam at the airport as we were leaving. Had that been handled, it wouldn't have happened. And so that's his responsibility. In the same way that in him sitting there watching January 6th unfold on television for hours before he called in any support, those moments, that depraved indifference, makes him responsible for all the death.
He hoped it would work.
Yeah.
You can't tell me different.
Right. Well, and there is there was a draft version of a document that they got a hold of about that kind of
about this.
Yeah, if you recall, remember his day after weird kind of presser where he decried what happened, but like his video about go home, we love you. This is you've done everything you can, but it's time to return to your house. Whatever that apparently there's a few different drafts of that too. That the January 6th committee, part of what they want from that is that he tried to do a few without telling them to go home. Just a lot of gnarly stuff. But in this exchange, or in this setup, they had written a draft version of the statement he made the following day about what happened. And the biggest difference I've found between those two things, between what he actually said the night after and what they had drafted up, was that he just softened the language immensely about the people who were, basically in deference to them, but in deference to the people who attacked
people
the
who
Capitol.
were murdering people and attacking cops.
Yeah, and then generic, making everything generic about, we don't like, we're the party of law and order. We don't like violence of any sort, meaning like, again, people who burned down a Target in response to George Floyd's death. It's the same thing as attacking our Capitol on the day we count the electoral votes. It's the same. Yes, because apparently Target is the capital of America, according to these folks. We got to take a break. We'll be back after the news. Yeah, it's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. We'll be back.
Just full of yogurt.